Welcome back. In this advanced bonus video, we're going to be looking at how to actually improve the styling of the alert box in the City Weather app to look something like this. So as you can see, we're no longer using the standard basic alert modal window that's shown. Instead, we have our own custom designed little overlay here with a button to close, the text that we want to display, and also this gradient background color and some slight shadow effect behind there. So in this video, we're going to be looking at how to actually take what we had before and move it into this new way of displaying the data. So the first changes we're actually going to be looking to make is setting a actual separate view component that's going to hold all of this overlay display that we want to add. So we do this by going down to the bottom of this main parent view component and adding some new code. So what we want to start by doing is opening a curly bracket and making an if statement. So this is going to be as simple as checking the state for a variable we're going to be adding next called new alert, and we're just going to check if this is set to 1. So if this is true, we want to run and display some actual code inside these brackets just here. So for now, we're just going to put a simple view component with some text inside. So this is incredibly simple at the moment, and then we want to actually add something that will display if this is false. So we're just going to have if this is false, this is what this character does here. Then if it's false, we're just going to show nothing, so it'll just be empty. So what we have now is this flat list component finishes, and then we just add this just before the main parent component is closed. So if we run this at the moment, nothing will actually happen. So what we need to do is just make sure there won't be any errors, because we added this new alert variable from the state. So we just need to make sure that we actually set this when we set the state for the first time. So we'll just add in new alert and set this as 0. So obviously if we have this set as 0, this will be false and nothing will happen. So if we just save this now, we will see that if we tap something, nothing's going to happen, and you can't see anything here. If we just to show you what's actually going on here, if we set this as 1 and save, you can see that there's hello right at the bottom just here. So obviously what we need to do is force this view component to float above every other item in this screen. So we do this by adding some actual styling. So we'll start by just adding this styling in here. So what we're going to do is create a new inline style for this component. We're going to give it a flex of 1. We're also going to justify content so everything is centered both horizontally and vertically. And we're going to actually as well set the positions. This is what allows this component to float above everything else. So we're going to set position to absolute, and then we're going to position this from the top, so 0 from the top and 0 from the left, and we're going to make sure it takes up the whole screen. Okay, so if you look what we've added so far, flex of 1 so that it takes up all the space available to it. We've centered it horizontally, we've centered it vertically, we've made it be positioned absolute, we've positioned it 0 distance from the top of the screen and 0 distance from the left of the screen, and the height is 100% and the width is 100%. Now one last thing we're going to add is a background color, and we're going to use an RGBA value for this. That'll be this is 0.5. So it should be a very, very slight grey background that we're going to add. So if we save this now, we'll see that I actually spelled position wrong. So we just fix that. So now you can see we have the attributes are doing exactly what we would expect. So we have the overlay that's taken up the entire screen. We have this light grey background and the item saying hello. So if we actually try and tap on any of the items now, you can see that there's no interaction because this component is taking up the whole of the screen. Now this isn't actually what we want, but if you think about the effect this will cause, so if we go back and set this new alert to 0 so it doesn't show automatically and run the app, you can see that we have the app displaying like this. We can interact still. If I just click it, yeah, and we'll get the alert. So what we want to do now is change the touchable highlight that we have on each of these rows. So instead of calling the alert, it's actually going to open, or not open, but it's going to change this new alert variable in our state from 0 to 1. So that will actually start making the overlay appear. So again, this is quite straightforward once you see how it's done. So this is where we're calling the alert function. So we'll just take this for now and comment it out up here, just to remember what we've used. So we're going to change this now. So instead of alert, it's going to say this set state, and then we want new alert to be set as 1. So if we now run this again, and then we interact with something, so say this row here, we then have that overlay. So now we can see how this touchable highlight can actually be used with the onPress event to change the state straight away, and how this can be used to actually make a component display on the screen that previously wasn't being used. So the next thing we need to do is actually change this from being just a static component that only has one element to be something that we can actually set the text that's going to be shown as well, and have another view component inside of this main component here that will have our actual styling and to show the actual box that we're going to show in the middle there. Okay, so what we want to do now is actually start to ensure that this text component is actually enclosed inside another view component. So this will be the component that we actually add our styling to, that has the color background we want and the new design of this box that will be around our message. So we'll add a new view component like this, and we're going to set some styling straight away. So what we want to add for now is something that will actually let us set the height and the width of this element. So let's just see what will actually work. So we want a width of not all the way across the screen, but perhaps maybe 75%, and a height of around 90. So because we don't need too much here, we only had one real line here, and we just need space to add some sort of close button. So 90 should be enough space here. So if we save this again now, and what we'll actually do is set a background color just so we can see what we have here. So if we interact with an element, we can see now we actually have a box that is exactly what we mentioned. So it's got a width of 75% and a height of 90. Now obviously we want to go a bit further than just this, but this helps us see what we have right now. So similar to what we did in the module when we were building out these rows, we want to add a gradient just to give this make this element stand out a little bit more. So we're also going to enclose this text element with a linear gradient component. So we will set this to have two colors as well. So again, we create the prop, and inside here we need an array, and these are two colors that I've seen that work quite nicely with each other. So it'll be 136A 8A, and the other color is 267871. So these are going to be our gradient colors. You can choose whatever colors you want here, so don't just use these if you don't want to. And then we're going to use the start prop, create an array, and that's going to go from 0, the angle, and then the second one will be 0.65. So again, you can change these around as well if you want to. So we'll close this here, and then make sure that we actually close this off as well, and indent the text. And actually these props should be indented as well. So if we save this, and let's see what we have so far. So obviously the actual overall height of this gradient is only going to be what we're actually containing inside. So it's actually the height of this text component, which isn't quite what we want. So let's set some more styling onto this actual gradient component. So again, we'll use this prop and we'll write it inline for now. So we're going to first set a flex of 1, and maybe let's curve these borders a little bit, because those sharp edges aren't quite what we want for this, just for this example. So we'll set a border radius here of maybe 20. So let's again save this and see how it looks so far. Okay, so this is starting to look a bit smoother now. What you'll notice straight away is this horrible white edge. Now this is just because we set this background color over here, so we can actually remove this now, because we only had that to see the size and space of this actual box. So if we remove this and have a look at what we have again, we can see a much smoother looking box already. So it's already starting to look much more designed than the default alert box we were using before. So the next thing we want to do is actually choose the text that's going to be shown. So here right now we have hello, which is set down here. That obviously isn't what we want to show. We want to make this be a dynamic variable of content that we can change based on the item description that we were setting before. So any ideas what we might use for this? Bearing in mind when we wanted to set the state to change this new alert variable, we could set this right in here. So for this actual text element, we want to do something very, very similar. So we're going to change this to, again, use a variable from the state, and we'll just call this alert message. So again, if you look at what we have here, it's very similar to the way we're using this new alert variable inside the state. So up where we are setting the new alert variable, we're going to also set the alert message to item description. So if we save this and run it again now and check what we have, you can see this is actually showing the data we want for each of these rows. And obviously we haven't got a close button yet. So before we start to actually style this text, we're going to look at how we can actually let the user have a button or touchable highlight or some type of interactive component to close this overlay. So that's what we're going to be working on next. So if we scroll back down to where we have our overlay, so again, here's the text. We want to go underneath this text and create a touchable highlight. So we're going to do exactly the same as we had up here. So we're going to set an underlay color, and we're also going to add another onPress event, and this will essentially revert everything we are setting up here. So we're going to revert new alert back to 1 and change the alert message to be empty. So as you can imagine, this will actually remove this and remove the actual overlay box from displaying. So let's actually do this and show you. So again, we have to actually make sure this is displaying something, and then we close off each of these elements. So if we just check that everything is correct, and if we save this now, interact with one of these rows, you can see we now have a actual bit of text here that looks very, very similar, that just says close. But if we actually tap on this, it closes the whole overlay, which is quite powerful. So you can see how these on-press events and interacting with the state, when combined with these if statements for these pieces of code like this, can actually be really powerful to have all of these interactive elements within your actual screens. So let's now continue to style the rest of these elements to get a result that will look a bit more appealing than just these two elements styled beside each other. So first, let's make sure that these elements are spaced right at the top and bottom of this modal, and let's actually center the text as well. So we'll start by going back into the gradient styling, and we will set the space between option for justified content. So if we save this right away, you'll see that this now has made sure these items are positioned right at the top and right at the bottom of the parent component that they're inside. So now we want to actually set some styling. So let's go to the alert message and adjust the font size. Let's set this as 16. The color, I think white font will probably look better here. Then some padding, because this is quite squished up against the top. And then we'll align the text to the center as well, because again it's pushed up against the side here, especially where we have the rounded edges. So if we save this one and see how this looks, there we go, that's a lot better already. You can start to see how nice this can look. So very, very similar for the closed text. We'll go in, set a style. This one will set some font weight just to make this text look a bit more interactive. Probably set this text as white again. Also we'll add some padding and we'll align it to the center. So let's just see how this looks. So there we go, so it's starting to look a lot nicer already. And then just to finish this off, we want to add a slight shadow to this component and maybe a little bit more padding because these don't look quite right. So let's go back to the gradient and add some more styling. So we'll first just add a little bit of padding, let's say 5, and then we want to add a shadow. So for this example, we're going to do a very, very simple shadow. So we'll put this on a new line just so we can show what we're adding here. So first you want to add a shadow color. So here we'll just add a black shadow, and then we need to set the shadow offset. This is slightly different to other styling options in that this actual property requires an object which sets a width and a height. But then apart from that, you just carry on. So this is, we'd set a width of 0 but a height of 2. And then we just have to set the opacity of this shadow. So let's say 0.3 and then a radius for this shadow. Okay, so if we save this now, let's see how this is looking. There we go. So this is how you can actually create more styled and custom interactions for your users. So this instead of using the default and plain looking alert box, we've created our own modal overlay that we've customized and designed to really fit our needs for this particular app.